Welcome back. The nationwide redistricting fight has made its way to Virginia today, where voters are weighing a referendum to allow the state to redraw the state's congressional map. This is what the map currently looks like on the left and what's proposed on the right. Currently, Democrats have the edge in 6 of the 11 districts, but if successful, they could have up to 10, and the map would remain in place until 2030. CBS News election law contributor David Becker joins me now. And David, I want to start off with a bit of sound from former Attorney General Eric Holder, who's been advocating on this issue. Let's take a listen.
We have to look at this in its totality. This is really a national fight. It's not a fight only about Virginia. And when the president told Governor Abbott in Texas, I needed 5 additional seats in the House of Representatives, there had to be a response to that.
Obviously, the former attorney general worked under former President Obama. But what is your assessment of Democrats saying that this is now a national fight rather than just Virginia?
Yeah, I can understand why they say that. I mean, we've got a situation where over the past decade plus, a lot of more Democratic-led states were trying to move away from partisan gerrymandering and adopted things like constitutional amendments and redistricting commissions. California was one of those states, of course. And they witnessed the president now attempt to pressure friendlier states like Texas to draw districts that appeared to favor Republicans. And I think what I've heard from Democrats is they viewed it as somewhat unilateral disarmament. And the only way to get both parties to the table is perhaps to have, essentially mutually assured destruction, that the blue states are going to redistrict for themselves, the red states are going to redistrict for themselves. And that, of course,
what kind of precedent does that say?
It's not a great precedent, because in the middle are the voters and the election officials who have to manage this process, right? Voters have an expectation of who's running in their district, who the representative is. That person is supposed to represent their interests, but we're drawing the lines all over the place, starting with Texas, but in a lot of other states, to kind of confuse voters. And one thing that I think is really important is after all of these redistrictings, election officials have to do a ton of work to make sure that all of the voters are correctly coded for their proper congressional district. Now, that work is manageable if you can plan every 10 years to do it. But if we start getting to the point where we're doing it every 2 years, it's a real problem. And right now, election officials all over the country are preparing for the primaries and the general election in November. If this Virginia referendum passes, as it might be close, there will be litigation over it, of course, but we might see other states. Florida is talking about perhaps calling a special session and redistricting. Imagine if you're an election official in Georgia and you might not see a new plan until maybe May at the soonest, when you've got primaries coming up in August and November, and how that makes their work that much harder and how it really confuses the voters.
Yeah, and I was going to say to that end, how does gerrymandering like this impact the broader state of democracy in this country?
I mean, it's, we're both parties are trying to maximize their potential, in particular, for winning the House of Representatives. And the fact is, we're a very, very closely divided nation right now. And the control of the House might hang on just a couple of votes. It might not, but it might hang on a couple of votes. And that's why I think you see the president pressuring a state like Texas to try to redraw districts. And then a state like California seeking to respond with their referendum, which of course passed in 2025. It's not a great situation for the voters. Hopefully both parties will realize this doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit them. The voters are going to have their say this election. And it would be wonderful if both parties came to the table and tried to figure out a way to draw districts that were based on more what we would call traditional districting principles.
Well, we will see how this develops going forward. David Becker, thank you so much for being here. Earlier, I spoke to former Virginia Republican Governor and Senator George Allen. He's been outspoken against today's redistricting effort. Take a listen to our conversation. What are your chief objections to this initiative?
Well, Nicole, the chief objections to this scheme, this gerrymandering election rigging scheme, is that first of all, they're saying they want to restore fairness. The existing congressional districts are fair. And it's not just me saying this. There's a Princeton project, and Virginia's districts presently get a grade A. What they're trying to do is inveigle the people of Virginia to give up their rights to honest, fair, representative democracy. And they're taking people in rural communities, suburban communities, and lumping them in with densely populated, say, Northern Virginia. And to me, that's not representative democracy. It is rigging elections. Moreover, Nicole, A little over 5 years ago, I was on the road with folks trying to get a constitutional amendment through. And and then the people of Virginia, by a 2/3 margin, 66% said, we're sick and tired of these conniving politicians, self-dealing, creating districts. We want an independent bipartisan commission to draw districts. And those are the fair districts we have presently. I'm part of a group that's a bipartisan group called No Gerrymandering Virginia. And we're trying to get the truth, the honesty, the information to the people. And we're very much focused on independent voters and reasonable Democrats. And the reason this is so close is that there's a lot from polling, independent voters this year on this issue of redistricting or gerrymandering are saying no to this power grab by the Democrats.
Well, clearly there's been a lot of finger pointing and tit for tat in terms of which party is to blame here. But do Republicans share some blame in this, considering, at least in this cycle, this started with a Republican push to redistrict in Texas?
Good question. And from my perspective, the president was wrong, and the legislature of Texas and North Carolina, Missouri were also wrong to have this abnormal mid-decade redistricting or gerrymandering. Now, California did the same thing to offset Texas. And then you have Maryland across the river. It's rare that I'll say something good about Maryland, but the Democrats in Maryland said they're not going to gerrymander out the single Republican in their congressional district. I look at principles that leaders with integrity should try to unify people about positive ideas. And the Republicans in Indiana that had a big majority, they resisted President Trump's entreaties and encouragement and insults in a roundabout way to gerrymander Indiana. And so Indiana is an example of Republicans saying, no, we're not going to do it. Same with South Carolina, New Hampshire, and some other states. So there's half a dozen states that did the wrong thing. And I think half a dozen states that have decided to do the right thing. But in Virginia, it's different in that we have a constitutional amendment approved by the voters who said that gerrymandering or redistricting is to be done by an independent bipartisan commission. And so that's where Virginia's laws and constitution are different. And the reason that they're trying to do this power grab with a referendum is that to change the Constitution of Virginia, you need approval of the voters. And the voters, the people, are the owners of the government. And I'm hopeful that today, when it's all said and done, in the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence from the British monarchy, that Virginia, the cradle of American liberty, will say no to these outside interests that are trying to manipulate and deny the people of Virginia, millions and millions of them, fair, honest representation.
I spoke with Virginia Congresswoman Jen Kiggans this week, a Republican whose district, as you know, would be impacted by this new map. She told me that it's unfair, it's unconstitutional, and un-American. So I know you want this measure defeated, but if it does succeed, do you expect a legal challenge?
Yeah, we'll have a legal challenge. Let me just bring up Jen Kiggans. I'm glad you interviewed her. Abigail Spanberger, who had previously stated that gerrymandering was detrimental to democracy and that it takes away the voices of voters. Abigail Spanberger won Jen Kiggans' 2nd congressional district last year. She also won the 1st congressional district held by Republican Rob Whitman. And any political party, Republican or Democrat, that needs to cheat to rig election results to win must not have a whole lot of confidence in the popularity of their ideas or the quality of their candidates. In the event that this does get a yes vote, and it's going to be very narrow, the Supreme Court of Virginia is going to have to rule on this. And I think if our side wins, the court cases are moot, because there was a circuit court judge with 2 rulings in Tazewell County whose decision saying that what they've done in the way that the manner, the processes are unlawful and unconstitutional. The Supreme Court will have to rule on it, and the Supreme Court of Virginia should uphold the Constitution and laws of Virginia and strike it down. But we're not waiting for judges to make this decision, but there'll be a court case. There is a court case and a hearing on Thursday in the event that, well, there'll be a hearing, period. Now, hopefully it'll be moot, but if not, the fight will continue for the rights and prerogatives of the people of Virginia to have fair, honest, representative democracy.
Former Virginia Governor and U.S. Senator George Allen, thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Nicole, and thank you for covering this important issue.